Welcome to Mash the Gas Podcast. Mash the Gas Podcast. Your weekly breakdown of every NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back, race fans. The 3-week drought is over. The Olympics are over. Racing is back, and it came back with a vengeance. Richmond, what an incredible race. The Cookout 400 from the Richmond Raceway. We're breaking down all the action. Joining me shortly, Mr. Jeff Davis and special guest Jennie May. Let's jump right into the action.
I'm bringing back our great friend, our favorite photographer from the Podium Finish. We got Jennie May here again. Haven't talked to her in a few months. How you doing today, Jennie?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Doing well. Wanted to catch up on the race yesterday. It was awesome that you got to go and take some more photos. Had a good time. I saw a lot of the pictures you sent over, and it looked like you got some really good shots in there.
Yeah, I got to go down for both the truck and the Cup Series races. And other than it being so incredibly hot, it was just, another amazing experience at the track. It's so surreal. Just each race is its own beast, I should say. But got some really awesome pictures. I know I sent you guys some of them, and more will be posted later on. But yeah, all kinds of stuff happened. I know you guys already know about that.
Yeah, definitely a lot of storylines coming out of Richmond, which we'll dive into here in just a sec. Of course, last time we visited, you were coming off of, kind of doing a shoot in Dover. You told us you had Pocono coming up, and then obviously Richmond. What would you say since our last visit that you've learned? Anything changed? Anything new or different in your world?
I mean, it's always a learning experience. I don't know if I can give you all the technicals, but I've definitely just continued to build on my craft, learning how to pan better, making connections and so on. It's just nice to be in the media center and connect with a lot of people that are doing similar things as to what I'm doing at each race. And even then, getting to meet some of the people that are on the teams and learning about what they do. And it's just nice to see how everyone doing their own little niche things coming together. And it just makes such a beautiful sport for fans and, anyone to view.
Yeah, it's such a family sport. You got to love NASCAR for that. And, I was reviewing some of the photos you sent, and kind of like we were chatting, when we chatted a few months ago about capturing that moment. That was one of the things that, you try to achieve, is capturing that moment, the emotion of, when people aren't looking and not noticing stuff. And I was kind of looking at the photos of Joey Logano pre-race that you took, and then the photo that you took of him after pre-race, and the total difference in his facial, just his emotions, you could tell were totally different. But yeah, he did a great job capturing the emotions of Logano.
Yeah, I mean, it's the craziness, like I said, the heat was insane. So not even just the emotions, but the sweat dripping off of them. And then of course, as you guys probably saw on TV. And so he came into pit road and he was squealing tires, throwing up smoke, and he was arguing with the officials. I caught a picture of that. And then later in the night, also, everybody heard, he changed his clothes, he grabbed his iPad, walked with intention right over to the NASCAR officials hauler. And I happened to see that, and I caught not a clear picture of it, but there's a picture of it in my file. And I'm just this is about to get crazy.
Well, yeah, you were, technically there, boots on the ground while all this was happening. A lot of it happened so quick, right? We come to overtime. You got the 22 getting turned, you get the 11 hooked in the wall, and then they all come to pit road while Austin Dillon celebrates on, the start finish line. What was the energy and the emotions like? Obviously you had Logano arguing with the officials. You had Hamlin immediately getting interviewed. What was it like on pit road? Were people kind of panicking? Was there a lot of, hey, this is BS? What'd you see?
So from my point of view, I didn't even see Joey Logano get wrecked. I just saw Austin Dillon come around, and I saw Denny spinning, flying across the start finish line into the wall, which it was just crazy to actually even get that captured on my camera. But once everyone got into pit road and they're parked and Joey's squealing tires and such, people are pissed, if I'm allowed to say that. There's people that are celebrating Austin Dillon's team, which I think the team really does deserve the win. Maybe not him so much himself, just the way he did it. But like from what I was hearing, a lot of the vibe I was getting was it was so reckless and rude. Like I feel like it's one thing if you accidentally wreck somebody coming in to the finish and you win, like that's one thing. But like he is wearing that number 3. He honored that really hard last night with just praising tail, raising hell, like just sending it across the start finish.
Yeah, I think it's just in the number 3's blood. Dale Sr.,
Yeah.
he'd wreck into about anybody. And I guess Austin Dillon's just kind of carrying that with him. But, like we were kind of chatting about earlier before we got online, there's one thing to do a bump and run and pass someone, but to blatantly wreck someone, that's not racing. If we want to play, derbies, yeah, that's a whole different sport, so I don't know. I'm kind of caught in between a little bit, but I do think NASCAR needs to do something about the endangerment and just wrecking someone intentionally like that for the win. And maybe that's kind of what this new car has created. It's having a hard time passing, even though we did see a decent amount of passing, and we'll get into it in a little bit with the soft compound and the harder compound tires, which I kind of liked. And obviously, number 99 of Daniel Suarez, he totally loved it, coming from 15th, 16th place all the way up to first place, and then kind of went back and forth. I read some interviews with him, and he's like, we should do this every race.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch some of the different strategies play out. I know I couldn't hear the radio and stuff because I didn't have a radio with me, and I couldn't watch the TV broadcast unless I was in the media center. So I don't know all the strategies that were playing out, but I do know that Danny was doing really good for a while, and it was just nice to see somebody that hasn't gotten a lot of wins, not one of the constant up at the front drivers, actually proceeding to do well on these new compound tires. But it was also interesting to watch Josh Berry fall back and some of the other drivers figure out their place with them, because I know there was a lot of praise and a lot of conversation about these tires. And it makes you wonder, is this something that NASCAR should proceed with on a regular basis, or is this something, hey, we just want to test it and it's going to be short term, or for these specific tracks, how it's going to play out overall?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn with the option tires. I mean, we saw it at North Wilkesboro, which, was arguably also kind of a snooze fest when it came to, sure, you had guys coming through the field. Kyle Larson did it back in North Wilkesboro. We saw Suarez come through, did finish P10. I liked it. I liked the option tire. I liked how some guys used it early, and then everyone kind of predicted that they were going to save a set of those reds for the overtime finish, which it pretty much came down to. But, when you look at Austin Dillon, he really did have a lot of speed when he came off the truck when they arrived in Richmond. He was fast in practice, qualified decent, ran up front, led 35 laps, was going to win this race clean, right? No issues until Ricky Stenhouse decided to plow through the 41. Might have been a mechanical issue. We haven't seen the data on that yet. And then, he's forced into an overtime restart position of, do I run second here and maintain my position at 32nd in points, or do I go wreck Joey Logano for the win? And that's, I think, what NASCAR is going to have to look at tomorrow with Elton Sawyer and these guys when they start dissecting the radio, because, rumor has it, somebody on the radio said to Austin Dillon, go wreck the 22, go get him. Whoever that was, I don't know. Jennie, you were in the media center. You heard what Richard Childress had to say about that.
So I did hear some of it. I was not personally there when Richard Childress was in the media center. But I did hear from friends that were there that they played the clip for him. Some people were claiming it's his spotter. Some people were claiming that it was Richard Childress himself, and basically saying that he was the one that was stating that Austin should wreck them. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than one person, because, you get in that excitement, and I understand the heat in the moment, but when you're played that clip and it's stated that it is, Richard himself saying it, and then you deny it and claim that you shouldn't hear everything that you or believe everything you hear on the internet, I don't think that was the good route to go there. I feel like he could have been yeah, heat of the moment, it happens. But I don't believe, like we said earlier, that is how racing should be. What's that teach everybody? Okay, it's okay to just wreck people. It's okay to be reckless. I mean, you're literally putting lives on the line at that point, and that's not okay.
And I think that's a little bit of the reason the officials were talking to Joey Logano, because you did see Joey Logano and the 11 of Denny Hamlin after the race pretty much stop right there in the number 3's pit stall. Joey Logano, like you said, he gave a little spin, did a little burnout almost of his own. and showed his displeasure, and his car got just a little bit sideways, which is dangerous to anybody standing in the pit stall itself. So I know, the officials gave the 22 a little bit of shit for that. And then after he drove by, Hamlin did pretty much the same thing minus the tires. He stopped, showed his displeasure, and rightfully so. So we're going to have to see what NASCAR does between, I don't know if they're going to do anything about Logano's little stop there and spin, but something needs to be done about this style of racing. Because, we go into somewhere like, the championship, we want to see people race to win. We don't want to see someone just wrecking to make sure that they get the checkered flag. That just doesn't make good racing.
No, absolutely. And that's not what we want, NASCAR to be all about. I mean, and it's just been interesting seeing in this Monday, social media take of all of it, right? Because most of the people that I've seen that, have their strong opinions about it are, major Denny, Hamlin, and Joey Logano haters. And, so they're going to side with the three and go, well, it's hard racing. It's this, it's that. And it's just, NASCAR needs to draw the line in the sand. I think that's what it is. Where is that line between hard racing? We know we're a contact sport, bump and run. It's been fine for, decades in the sport, but where do you draw that line of that's too much? Driving straight through turn 3 and wrecking a guy, and then arguably hooking somebody else coming to the finish line. There's 2 cars that were taken out. Now, I think there's still some pieces with the SMT data. Did the 11 come up? Or was it a straight hook to the right rear like we saw Chase Elliott do to Denny Hamlin at Charlotte last year? I think those are all the things that need to get ironed out. But I think the fact remains, everyone can agree that something has to be done.
I think, and I did hear this from somebody, I think it's a good point, that they could have handed out penalties and decisions right there and then. And, even though they didn't call anything in that moment. But I think it's almost good of them to wait until Tuesday. Yeah, it has us all sitting on the edge of our seat. And yeah, it might play in their favor, get the views and what have you. But I honestly think it's good for them to discuss it and try and figure out, okay, what can we do to prevent this from happening in the future? Because it isn't good, clean racing. And even though I'm personally not a huge Denny Hamlin fan or a Joey Logano fan, I honestly am siding with them on this one. I had nothing against Austin Dillon until this. And again, you could mark it up to the heat in the moment thing. But again, you're now causing other people to wreck, and that's dangerous. That's not cool at all. That's not safe. I don't think that was the best decision that he could have done. He could have just, floored it and went for the finish line, played it fair and square, but he chose to do otherwise. And now consequences will come.
Yeah, so he's been in the sport since 2011 was his rookie year for the number 3, and that's 13 years ago. And now he's got this is his 5th win in 13 years. This was probably his only shot for maybe another win for another few years if he's going to be in the sport for a while. But in my eyes, it's almost kind of like a waste of a spot in the playoffs. I think there's a lot of other drivers that deserve to be in there because I think he's going to be kind of a one and done in the playoffs. He'll make it to that first round. Obviously, he's in the first round. I don't think he's going to go further after that. What do you think, Kevin?
Well, I think that's kind of the conversation piece. That's what's changed so much in just a short amount of time, because with 5 laps to go, everyone's sitting there going, Austin Dillon's going to win this race clean. It went green the whole way, not a single caution. How far does he go in the playoffs? Right? It would have been a different demeanor and tone behind that conversation, because regardless, the 3 is not going to make it past the round of 16, in my opinion, whether he gets in clean or not. Right? So the question is now, will NASCAR strip the win? Possibly. But is there a situation where they he keeps the trophy, it goes down on his record as a win in Richmond, but there's some sort of playoff implication here. You're not playoff eligible this way. That's, I think, what's going to be interesting. I don't know if it's a ball and strike call, but something needs to be done in the sense where going forward, these situations, if it occurs, I mean, they talked about Lane Riggs in the Craftsman Truck Series, hooked a guy, got 2-lap penalty. If that same penalty carries over to Austin Dillon, then essentially he's going to finish 30th or worse. And I think that's going to be the right move.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that one too, because he was in 32nd place before this, and now he's in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? But how much of that also has NASCAR created? And that finger pointing starts to go around, right? NASCAR's created a system you have to win to get in, but does that mean wrecking a guy to get in? The boys have at it rule that we've heard throughout the years. You go back to Kyle Busch wrecking Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Richmond in 2008. When Clint Boyer snuck by for the win. There's been a lot of scenarios, and it always seems to come down to Richmond. It just creates for these really interesting overtime starts. You go back to the spring race when Denny Hamlin won this race by almost jumping the restart, so Richmond just seems to have a lot of storylines. Is that short track racing? If you're an Austin Dillon fan, yes. If you're a Joey Logano fan, no.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. We'll just have to wait and see what NASCAR is going to say about this, Tuesday, tomorrow, and see what they come down with. But, again, hey, it is what it is at this point. Austin Dillon sitting in 13th place in the playoffs. We got Martin Truex Jr., 78 to the positive, so most likely still good to go. But then we got, Bubba Wallace and Chris Buescher, who, Chris Buescher won last year in Richmond. And by the way, he won back-to-back and went to Michigan and won that race too, which our friend Jenny's going next week as well. Right, Jenny?
Yes, I am. I'm very excited to get back to the first track that I've gone to for a NASCAR race. It'll be interesting to see both sides of the track.
It's always fun to get down there in the pits and be able to do what you're doing down there and getting some good photos. I really want to get out to Michigan. It's the last 2-mile oval that we have on the circuit anymore now that Fontana's gone. I was fortunate enough to go to see Fontana with my parents about, 13, 14 years ago, but that was quite a while back. But yeah, you're going to have a good time out there in Michigan, I'll bet.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, every race is its own beast. So I'm sure I'll find some things that will be challenging, and the heat, as always, at this time of year is going to be absolutely miserable. So just I'll get my steps in, hydrate, and get to view something that I deem super magical, no matter what track you're at.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because Kevin, you're going to, let's see, Kansas City, beginning of October, right?
It's actually the end of September. Yep. The last Sunday in September. I'll be out there in KC, and that's also going to be the first round of 12. So different storylines there. But, Michigan always puts on a great show. I love the 2-mile racetrack, high speeds. Tire wear is going to be interesting. Fuel strategy is going to be interesting. And as of right now, Jenny, I don't know, the weather's looking iffy. I know we're kind of 6 days away from the flag dropping, but a lot of rain in the forecast.
Well, don't put that bad juju on me. It's gonna be a 7.5-hour drive out there. So I'm hoping for the best. That's the same with Richmond. Like I knew with all the hurricane coming through that it was a hit or miss, but weather turned out really good. And fingers crossed. It's rained every year that I've gone to Michigan so far. So it might just come down to a rain delay. And if it's an extra day, then so be it, I guess.
Yeah, it'd be pretty shitty though if you had to drive all the way out there and wind up getting rained out and whatnot. But kind of what you're saying earlier though, with the truck race getting in, the hurricane was coming in. We thought the truck race might having some issues with rain or even getting canceled out. But you got some really good photos of Raja Carruth sitting there in his stall and in the garage area, and then a lot of good truck shots on the start finish line.
Yeah, and like you mentioned earlier, it's capturing those emotions. It's capturing the things that a lot of people don't see. Like personally, my favorite shots are the candid shots. I feel like learning how to do like panning is at least to me, it was pretty easy. And I feel like pretty much anyone that picks up a camera can learn to do it relatively quickly. But it's capturing the candids. Some are just luck, and some of them really it's like you want to tell a story with them. So it's the pictures right before they're getting in the car. It's the game face. Like I know I captured another one of William Byron with his game face ready to go. And then like you were saying, Rajah Caruth, there's pictures that I didn't put in there, didn't edit, but like he had a whole pouty lip situation going on. It's interesting. You want to know what's going through their heads, especially when, they were so close or top 10 or so. Or like, the same thing with what happened with, Joey and Denny. Like I said, I captured the picture of him arguing with the officials and of him watching the replay up on the screen, just looking so pissed off, so distraught. And it's those pictures that paint 1,000 words for the people that aren't there, the people that didn't get to watch the broadcast, or even the ones that are just scrolling through social media. You get the chance to share a little piece of what is now history and could, lead to rule changes or, possible stripping of a win or, getting points taken away, whatever will come down from NASCAR tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see as well in that regard, but it's just nice to be able to capture these moments and share them with like anyone of any age.
Yeah, and speaking of pouty moments, I think the most pouty shot you got that I saw was Corey LaJoie when he was sitting on the wall there. You got a photo of him just sitting there, just kind of like looking like a sad puppy. And I think it's because he knows he's done after this year. But I actually kind of laughed when I saw that photo. I know that's bad to say, but I saw that one of Corey LaJoie, and I'm like, he's just like, shit, this is my last year. I don't know what I'm going to do. But good job on that photo too, Jenny.
Yeah, and there's a couple other pictures that I had in that gallery of, like we said, that NASCAR is a family sport. Yeah, there's a lot of drama. Yeah, there's a lot of, stuff that you don't see on the TV, but like I got pictures of John Hunter Nemechek and Ryan Preece and their kids, and Harrison Burton and his girlfriend, longtime girlfriend, was there. It's just nice to see like people coming out and supporting their drivers, and then family members also traveling along, because it's not always an easy job to like travel around the country weekly basis. And I know like a lot of these drivers, like they got a nice fresh restart after their 2-week Olympic break, but like it's always nice to just have your family there with you, even though you were just stuck at home with them for 2 weeks, and have them supporting you. And yeah, it's capturing moments like that like, I don't know, really make my heart just like happy. And again, like the pouty pictures and the sweat dripping off at the end of the race, or just the little details that people don't get to see on TV.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Just giving a different perspective, a different look at what's going on, capturing those moments. And you kind of alluded to what I was going to say. I think you captured some history there. You caught the looks and emotions of people that were going to look back on this race in Richmond of 2024 and go, okay, that's when they drew the line in the sand. That's when they stripped someone of a win, or whatever's going to come from it. There's no doubt in my mind that you definitely captured a piece of history.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there were a lot of really, really good shots that you got from Richmond. I can't wait to see. Hopefully, Michigan will play out without any weather issues, and you'll be able to get some more shots for that. And then let's see. I think you said you were going to be going to the Charlotte Roval later this year. Is that correct?
Yes, as long as credentials go through, which I mean, no reason they shouldn't. But whenever they open up for approval, those will be submitted, and then I'll get to go down for that. I figured I'm going there either way, as a fan or as someone that's working the race. So either way, I will get pictures, get to enjoy it. But if I get to work it, even better.
Very nice.
Yep, that's definitely the best deal there. NASCAR credentials, they can be a little bit of fun to work with. We have some experience with that. But Jenny, thanks for giving us some insight here. Before we let you run, obviously any of our listeners that want to get in touch, check out some of your work. Where should we send them?
Yeah, like absolutely check out my Twitter. That's where I post most of my work. It's Lady Flame 30. I do have some of my pictures. Actually, we just posted our first article from the truck race on the podiumfinish.net. So you guys can go check that out there. And you can follow the Podium Finish on Facebook, Instagram, or check out the website.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see some of your photos up there online and all the good work you do. And we really appreciate you coming back, and can't wait to have you again.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Yep. Thanks, Jenny. Best of luck to you. Keep crushing it out there. And you're in our wheelhouse now. So you're going to be like our resident expert from the track when we can't be there.
Oh, I hope I can have some sort of insight that you guys don't already know. You guys are throwing facts out and I'm like just nodding. Yep, I totally know that.
Well, hey, fake it till you make it. But you're obviously making it, doing a damn good job. So anyway, thanks again, Jenny.
Thank you, guys.
So yeah, it was definitely an eventful race out there. Had a good time watching it. I do think the compound differences in the tires were pretty cool. I was wondering, what your thoughts were about having the two sets. Should we make this a regular thing, Kevin?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we've learned a lot about this option tire. We now have 2 races under our belt, one an all-star race, and now we have a full points race. And I think there's some good takeaways as far as the way strategy played out. I like the fact that Goodyear brought a good tire, both the primary and option tire. We didn't see tire failures, Jeff. We didn't see, a lot of wear. That really wasn't an issue here. So it really came down to, long green flag runs, who could not only maintain a lead, but then gain position. We saw a lot of comers and goers on different tires. So I like the way that panned out. Now, with that said, I think we do keep this option tire to a mile or less. So, with saying that, does that include Dover, New Hampshire, and Phoenix possibly? Or do we just run this option tire on the flat short tracks? Are you going to see an option tire at Bristol? I think all those things still need to be, kind of ironed out, just like we saw with the new updated wet tire package of what that looks like on the tracks. I think the option tire will kind of be similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with you on that, because it's like, I don't know if I'd want to see this on 1.5 mile or, larger tracks, but anything below a 1.5 mile, I thought it was a really good. It was an interesting way for NASCAR to kind of switch things up a little bit. We've had a lot of problems this year with people complaining about the short track package that we're running. Not a lot of passing, not a comers and goers, not happening, just not doing it. But being able to see that option of having that softer compound tire and being able to see Daniel Suarez be the first one to put them on and, charge the way all the way to the front. And then, up to the crew chief on when do we put on the softer compound? Do we save them for our only 2 sets for the last stage? Made for some really interesting racing, Kevin.
Yeah, it really did. And, we saw a little bit of practice with those tires, on Saturday before qualifying, just to kind of give drivers a taste of what that was going to look like. And, the speeds were fast for sure. But I think the thing that about the primary tire is you get a lot more longevity, right? Once that option tire hit that 35, say maybe 40 lap mark, you weren't really seeing a advantage as far as lap times were concerned. They kind of evened out there. So that's where it got tough on breaking down the stages. We're going to put the options on here, maybe run back to the primary to end out stage 2. There was just a lot of different things. I thought the best strategy was use your option tires right around the end of stage 2 to gain the track position, get yourself up back in the top 10 so you can race with these guys. And then I think pretty much everybody saved that set for the overtime. So that part became pretty predictable. But, again, had Ricky Stenhouse not wrecked Ryan Preece, we wouldn't even be having these conversations about all the hoopla that took place after there. And I think most folks would have written this race off as kind of a snooze fest.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot going on. I mean, we had 4 total cautions, and 2 of them were stage breaks. And then the only other 2 cautions happened with, 5 laps to go for, as we call them, Recce Spinhouse hitting up into Ryan Preece there. And then obviously the caution that came out at the checkered flag in overtime. But I really do like that softer compound tire, especially on a surface that as rough as Richmond is. That is a cheese grater type of a surface. So to be able to have the capability to put on that softer tire and march your way up and do some passing, I thought it was pretty damn fun, Kevin.
Yeah, I would say so. I thought overall, that aspect of it added something that maybe the short tracks needed. And I think it's something we can build off of for sure to give these guys what they've been asking for. And that's more drive off the corner. That's what you need at these short tracks to complete the passes. Unless you're Austin Dillon, then you just run through people for the win. Now, with that said, we've certainly done a lot of Austin Dillon bashing. I will say of his years in Cup Series, I've never really seen Austin be an aggressive guy. Rarely was he involved in any on or off track incidents. I'm sure there's a couple there that some drivers will remember, but, overall, I feel like he's a pretty clean and fair racer. I don't think we put this entirely on Austin Dillon. I think there was a lot of pressure. We're obviously hearing, the reports from the radio, a lot of other things that factored into this, and I don't necessarily put this against Austin that he's a bad, nasty racer. He's a dirty guy, but overall, this is what he's going to be remembered as. It's now kind of, I don't want to say tarnished his reputation, but it's certainly, Joey Logano had some pretty choice words for him. He said, well, he sucked his whole career and that's the only way he can win. What are you going to say? You're frustrated. You're in the heat of the moment. Everyone's going to throw mud at the 3, but I think it's a bigger issue than just an Austin Dillon thing.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Richard Childress has been having a hard time this year. We know that. And you put someone there like Kyle Busch and he can't get a win. He's gone 19 years with a win every single season, more than any other driver. He's got that record. So to go, 20 seasons and not be able to get a win, there's a lot of pressure for that win. And, so I do see, why Austin Dillon did what he did. Do I agree with it? Not necessarily, but, it was something that Childress Racing really did need. And I think about the only, praise and high five that he got was when Kyle Busch came out when he's pulling his car into victory lane and kind of got in his window there and said, congratulations, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, for an RCR standpoint, the big takeaway is going to be progress. There's no question. The 3 showed up with speed, like I mentioned, fast in practice, qualified 6, led 35 laps, was going to win this race clean. I mean, we're literally talking about if Ricky Stenhouse didn't do Ricky Stenhouse things, we'd be having a totally different conversation about the three of Austin Dillon. I don't think a lot of folks are looking at the fact that they did bring a fast race car, a winning race car to Richmond. But look, how many times has a guy led the race at the end, goes into overtime and loses, and I think that's something that Austin Dillon just going forward and the team goes, look, man, we're just gonna have to run second here. It's just not worth overdriving turn 3 and wrecking 2 guys and to end up in this situation.
And it's really unfortunate because, he still would have been in 30th place or something like that if he would have finished in second. So he knew this was his only way in, no matter what excuses he makes or what speculation was on the radio or whatnot, saying, go wreck Logano, who knows. But kind of like we were just chatting about, if old Ricky wouldn't have got into Ryan Preece there, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, and 3 would have won this race fair, clean, and outright. So, really, really tough call there for Austin Dillon. And, you're right. It's kind of put a black mark on him for right now, but, time will fade away on that. So he's just going to have to come out there and actually prove himself now. Is he really going to be able to be a good driver? Like we were just saying, he's been in sports since 2011. This is only his 5th win since he started. So is he going to come out and do some more good racing? Or like we said, my opinion, he'll probably not make it past the first round of the playoffs, Kevin.
I just don't see it, Jeff. When you look at, the first few races, obviously we got Atlanta, which certainly could be, a possibility for a win for the 3. You look at Watkins Glen, not really a track that I'd have the 3 circled at, and so right out of the gate, the round of 16 coming in pretty deep. It's not an easy round. I don't care who you are. It's going to be a tough round with, starting with a plate race and then a road course in the first round. So those guys that are seated pretty high up, 1 through 8, if you will, maybe can afford to have a hiccup here or there. But if you're Austin Dillon, struggling, running 32nd in points, average finishing around 20 to 25th, you're not going to make it past the round of 16. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I really don't. It's really tough now. Martin Truex was 120 some points in the positive before this race. And you know how it goes in fantasy. I know there were a lot of us that had Martin Truex Jr. in our lineup. And of course, blows an engine after it's too late to put him in the garage. Really unfortunate, but hey, he's still 78 points to the positive. Ty Gibbs plus 19. Bubba Wallace, he's only got 3 points positive. And Chris Buescher, I was wondering if he's going to put on the heater this weekend because I had him in my lineup since his Richmond win last year. And again, he won Michigan. Coming up next race, back-to-back wins for Chris Buescher last year. So, what do you think about the old 17 car in the 17th spot of the playoffs, Kevin?
Well, I think, he's got a good race car, right? We know RFK, they have speed. They've shown speed, right? And Buescher just now needs to, do what he needs to do to get this thing, right? He won Michigan last year. He's 3 points to the negative right now with a lot of chance for wiggle room there. I mean, you look at Ty Gibbs or Bubba Wallace, all they really need to do is have a not so great day and Buescher's in. So, if you're Chris Buescher, you're feeling pretty good going back to a track where you won last year. RFK's got good speed. It's right in Ford's backyard up there. But it's going to take a good, clean 3 weeks. And I think the strategy for the 19 of Martin Truex is going to be similar now that his points lead has shrunken, quite significantly after that DNF. And I think that's a bigger problem over there at Joe Gibbs that is starting to develop, Jeff. We saw 2 engines expire on the 54 of Ty Gibbs, one of which had the chocolate melt coming out of the pipes. Similar situation had to Truex. He just shut it down before it got to that point. That is not something that you're going to feel very confident about as an organization 3 weeks away from the playoffs, having serious mechanical failures.
Yeah, you don't want to see that when you're coming up with the playoffs. And, Denny Hamlin, even though he did get wrecked, he did get scored with a P2 on this race. But, Denny Hamlin hasn't had very good luck, I think, in these last, 5-6 races, Kevin.
Yeah, not so great. I mean, not where Denny wanted to be. Obviously, he was in position to win, was going to run a clean second place, right? If we didn't have the overtime, showed some strength at Richmond. I do feel like the 11 has a well-rounded team. They're great on pit road. Chris Gabehart making terrific calls. It's definitely a championship caliber team. They just, need to, try to avoid some of this chaos a bit and just keep showing up running good. He's well locked into the playoffs. I'm not too worried about Denny. I think he'll go deep into the round of 8, and then, we'll see where those guys are getting to Phoenix. But, it's never good getting rattled 3 weeks before the playoffs, but, listening to him on Actions Detrimental, Denny's been here. He knows he hasn't won a championship. No, but he's won a lot of races. He's been through a lot of scenarios. They just got to refocus, get this Austin Dillon thing figured out. That's not going to change what the 22 and the 11 have to do going forward.
Yeah, he has what it takes. He's obviously championship caliber material. We know that. I just find that I was looking at some stats just a second ago, and it is in the last 7 races, his average finish is 23rd place. So I was wondering, is Denny Hamlin starting to lose a little bit of his momentum going into these last few races before the playoffs? And will he overcome it? Now, obviously, he did overcome it, even though he did get wrecked. He still got a P2 out of it. But it's something they're going to have to look at. You can't be blowing up motors and having to park your car if you're going to win a championship, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something Joe Gibbs needs to be focused on, all hands on deck before we get to Michigan. Michigan's a track that's going to put a lot of wear on the motor. We turn a lot of RPMs there, 5-speed transmission or not. We're running, wrapped out top 5th gear going into turns 1 and 3. It's a very fast racetrack. So, good test of the longevity and durability of these motors. Going into, we have Daytona following Michigan and then Darlington, before we kick this thing off in Atlanta. So it's a tough road, man. If you're on that cutoff line, you're not sleeping good. Bubba Wallace, Chris Buescher, all these guys know that we got to go out and run the best 3 weeks we can. But, sometimes things are just out of control. You get caught up in a wreck. You get, a tire penalty on pit road. I mean, just something so quickly like that can just ruin your day. So it's not going to get any easier. It's certainly not going to be any easier here this weekend. Fire Keepers Casino 400 up there in Michigan. Again, we talked about it last year. Chris Buescher led 52 laps, wins the race. His teammate and owner, Brad Keselowski, finishes P4, led 15 laps on the race. I really feel like RFK, you have to have him circled going into this weekend, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd also look at Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin again, because they finished P2 and P3 last year. But like we just talked about, you can't have those engine failures if you're going to win. So I think that they'll probably get that sorted out. But I think it's going to be a great race. And, Daniel Suarez was in the top 10 as well, finishing P6. So maybe he'll have a good race as well, Kevin.
Yeah. I think those are good guys to keep an eye on, right? I mean, we're 3 races away. We don't know where, some folks may be out of a Kyle Larson or a Denny Hamlin. I know I'm pretty much scraping the barrel at this point, Jeff. I think I got 1 on Hamlin, 1 on Larson. So I'm kind of, gauging where I want. I'm certainly not going to use him at Daytona. So do I use him at Darlington? Do I use him at Michigan? That's kind of the toss up I'm in. But, for folks that have a lot of uses, smoke them if you got them. Absolutely run them, get as many points as you can. But I do think RFK is going to be top of my list.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there as well, man, because we, like I said, 3 races to go before the playoffs. I'm scraping the barrel right now on drivers. So, I've got some decent ones left, but I am definitely out of my Kyle Larson and my Denny Hamlin picks, Kevin.
And who knows, we might see, Michigan has been known, I don't want to say to create new time drivers, but, I can recall a lot of times in history where a guy hasn't won a race all year, gets to Michigan and wins. Tony Stewart comes to mind, a couple others. So still an opportunity here for a Ty Gibbs to go out there and grab, a win. Or, Chris Buescher, obviously we know he almost won Kansas. We know he's close. He can win. But when I look at some of these guys that might, quote unquote, be an upset, could a Kyle Busch pull it off? Could you have Ross Chastain finally put all the pieces together to get in? There's just so many guys that are right there that have a chance to get in and bump somebody out.
Yeah, and Chastain finished P7 last year, so he might have a really good opportunity. But I'll tell you what, if you want to see someone back something up, let's see the number 3 car win in Michigan next week, Kevin.
Well, if I'm a betting man, I'm going to say that's not going to happen. I'm sure Vegas is working the odds on it and this and that and the other, but if I had to predict, and I could be wrong, I might eat these words next week. I just don't predict a good weekend for RCR going to the 2-mile track. I mean, you look at the 1.5 miles, you look at the super speedways. These guys haven't had the finishes this year. They just haven't put it together. And I certainly don't think they're going to have the speed to compete at a 2-mile.
No, that was kind of a joke. I know. But yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I don't think either one of those guys are going to do very well in Michigan. So I don't think you're going to be eating your words on that one at all, Kevin.
Well, we'll see. There's a hungry Kyle Busch out there, and there's a lot of eyes on RCR. Man, what a year for RCR. You got Kyle Busch fighting Stenhouse at the All-Star race. You got Andy Petrie says, later, guys, I'm out of here. Good luck. You got Austin Dillon creating all kinds of storylines. Kyle Busch, is he going to win? There's just a lot of gripe going on over there at RCR.
Yeah, there really is. And hey, speaking of gripe, did you see anything about the Knoxville Sprint Cup race that Kyle Larson took first place at?
Yeah, down there in old Knoxville, Tennessee, jumped a short flight from Richmond.
Yeah, man, he was actually getting booed at the driver intros for that race. And I don't know if it's because people are just like, Kyle Larson wins too much. Is he starting to get a little bit of hatred in the fans out there in the sprint series? Or they're just sick of seeing him out there. But hey, that was $138,000 paycheck or something like that to take home. And Kyle Larson's been running those races since day one. Even before he got suspended in NASCAR. So hey, I don't mind it at all. But I was quite surprised to hear, kind of like Denny Hamlin, his home track in Richmond this weekend, getting about 70% of the fans were actually giving him the boos.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The Denny Hamlin thing we've kind of covered over the last year or two, and as he continues to become, one of the heels of NASCAR, if you will, and one of the more booed guys. Kyle Larson, that's a tough one. I think Kyle Larson just has the Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson effect going on right now, and we saw the same thing happen to the 24 in the 90s. We saw it happen to the 48 during the 2000s, just going out there and winning, and people were booing him strictly for that reason. Because if you're basing it off merit, Kyle Larson's a stand-up guy, class act, great champion of the sport. Clean racer. I don't see any reason to boo him on those means other than he's just a threat to win all the time, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got such a great attitude, and Rick Hendrick and his whole team. We know how Mr. H does it. He doesn't hire anyone that's a complete asshole for the most part. I mean, he did have Kyle Busch on there for a couple of years, but then he got his ass kicked out for the most part.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I guess somewhat shocked by that, but not really. When you have a guy that wins that much, you're going to get booed. I think you're going to hear some cheers for Austin Dillon. I think Austin Dillon gained some fans. And like I said, if you're an 11 or a 22 fan, you're now a 3 hater. So as much as you gain some fans, I think you also gain some haters. And, at the end of the day, is it good for Austin Dillon? We'll see. It just depends, because it's bringing a lot of publicity. It's got us talking about it. It's the main storyline of the week in NASCAR. But if you're Austin Dillon and you do get this win strip from you, you're back to square one. Now you got to start over. You got to go try and win these next 3 weeks. And that's a ton of pressure.
Yeah, it really is. And like you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, there's a lot of people out there that really dislike the 11 and the 22 car. So, they're just sitting there laughing their asses off going, number 3 just took them both out. That's awesome. Love Austin Dillon. So, we'll just have to see if he can back it up, see how it shakes out, Kevin.
Well, one thing's for sure, Michigan's going to be interesting. I think when we get there and unload this weekend for practice, we're gonna have some different storylines to talk about. But the cream rises to the top, and the guys that show speed are gonna do well. Long green flag runs, fuel mileage, tire management, it's all going to go down. Obviously, Xfinity Series is back. They've been on an extremely long break, so those guys are back for the Cabo Wabo 250 this Saturday. Looking forward to that, of course. And then Cup Series Sunday, 2:30 Eastern, USA, Michigan. Who you got, Jeff? Who's winning it?
Well, man, I'm going to take Martin Truex Jr. in the number 19. As long as his engine doesn't blow up, I think he's going to do very well.
That's a good pick. I think a lot of us are leaning towards 19. I really thought he had a chance to win Richmond, and he might have had that engine not expired. Great pick. Man, I'm going to go wild here. I'm going to say Denny Hamlin gets it. I just think with all the gripe and all the bad luck and the 23rd average finishing position over the last 7 weeks, I think Denny goes out there and says, look, I'm ready to win this championship.
We're both going Joe Gibbs on this one, huh, Kevin?
Joe Gibbs Toyota for the win, man. I think so. I think Hendrick's going to be fast. They're always in the conversation. Don't sleep on the 5. But I think a Joe Gibbs Toyota goes to victory lane. I'm with you.
Yep, 100%, man. I think that the Joe Gibbs crew, as long as they don't blow up an engine, I think they're going to mash the gas, Kevin.
Well, we'll just have to see. It's going to be a great race for sure, Jeff. We'll be back next Monday night, break all this down, get ready for Daytona. It's close, man. These playoffs, they are within reach. The pressure is building, and it's just going to, calm heads, cooler heads prevail going forward. Bubba Wallace, 3 points to the good. Man, we'll see what old 23XI's got this weekend.
Yep, can't wait for it, Kevin. And what do we do until next week?
Let's go ahead and mash that gas.
The engine is rolling and the left's in the dust. Well, I